I also believe what we're facing is a national security emergency. When ISIS boasted in 2015 that they would use the Mediterranean to get their operatives into Europe, perhaps the European Union should have taken them more at their word. And it was interesting to note that Sir Keir Starmer himself used the phrase national security emergency during the general election. Thank you very much indeed, and I thank the honourable member for Harborough for calling this debate. He must find it excruciatingly embarrassing how badly the previous government dealt with this issue. With my strong connection in Kent and Sussex with the commercial fishing industry, the angling trade and indeed the lifeboats, I started to feel in early 2020 that the odd boat that had crossed, as the honourable member from Dover mentioned, in 2018 and 19, that something big was about to happen, that the gangs had realised that your chances of deportation from this country were very low. And so I went out repeatedly from Dover into the English Channel, filming boats, meeting face-to-face boatfuls of the young men that have been described, in many cases very aggressive young males. But I also got to the bottom of the use of the word escorts. I kept being told that escorts were crossing the channel. I wasn't quite sure what they meant to begin with, but then I understood it was the French Navy. That the French Navy literally escorted boats across the English Channel and handed them over to Border Force or RNLI. So I made a bit of a fuss about the whole thing. I said unless something was done, huge numbers would come. I said there might even be an invasion, a word that got me in very big trouble. But given that we're pushing up towards 140,000 that have come, I don't think I misused the word. The efforts of the last government to deal with this were frankly pretty pitiful, and Rwanda might have worked in theory, but of course in practice it was not going to work. All the while we are subject to that court in Strasbourg, as we saw that evening. And more interestingly, the incorporation of the convention into British law means that actually British judges will always rule in favour of ECHR. So we have to face up to that reality. I also believe what we're facing is a national security emergency. When ISIS boasted in 2015 that they would use the Mediterranean to get their operatives into Europe, perhaps the European Union should have taken them more at their word. And it was interesting to note that Sir Keir Starmer himself used the phrase national security emergency during the general election. So he's going to have to act accordingly, appointing a new border chief commander. Yeah, we may get some better intelligence, fine, but you know, the French already, and we have given them hundreds of millions of pounds, the French do stop a lot of dinghies from crossing. They put knives in the dinghies, but the problem is that the prospective illegal immigrants just hide in the dunes and come back the next day. So that isn't going to work. And smashing the gangs, well, I don't know. And I've been hearing for the last 30 years, we're going to smash the drugs gangs in this country. And yet there's more Class A drugs being taken today than there ever were before. You know, a good operative gang working out of those sand dunes in northern France in a reasonable week of weather can expect to make at least €2 million. The financial rewards are very, very high. So really what this comes down to are two things. Number one is political will. Successive Australian prime ministers attempted to deal with the problem. They all failed. They tried offshore processing, etc., until in the end, Tony Abbott just towed the boats back to Indonesia. There was international outrage from the UN, the EU, and indeed from the Foreign Office, of course.
Are you aware of the fact that they were still hulled vessels, and if we attempt to do the same, we're likely to kill people in our waters? Is that what you want to see?
Just a few weeks ago, for the first time, Border Force did an emergency pickup on the other side of the line, and rather than bringing the people back to this country, as previously, you know, Dover Lifeboat had done, Dungeon Lifeboat had done, they actually took them into Calais, all right? So that is the way that we do it. Yes, you're right, these are far flimsier vessels, but the principle that you take people back to from whence they came is the point that I'm trying to make. And we can do this. We can do this under the international law of the sea. we can do this. I would ask, Minister, that given the money we've given to the French, we no longer accept escorts from the French Navy. The day after 12 people died in the Channel, the day after, there was a French naval vessel escorted a dinghy from a couple of hundred yards off Wissant all the way to our 12-mile line. No more French naval escorts, I think, is vital. So we need political will, and the Germans, of course, are now showing it. The Germans will ignore the ECHR. The Germans, by the way, sent a plane back full of young men to Afghanistan the other week. So with political will, with leaving the ECHR, we can solve this. And I just promised the Labour government one thing. This issue caused great pain to the Conservative Party, and it impacted in the general election. This issue of illegal migration and the crime that it leads to, which is a conversation that's barely started in this country, but a conversation that in France and Germany is now very big, will do massive damage to Labour's electoral chances. You're going to have to get tough, and I'm afraid your leader is going to have to rethink his position on the ECHR. Thank you.